Ricardo and I would now be happy to take any questions or comments that you might have, if any. Maybe it's just nap time. You know?
When is Volume 2 coming out?
Volume 2. The old Volume 2 question. Yeah. You know, it's funny because there's no shortage of like suggestions from people, largely the denizens of Facebook. You know, have been making these suggestions, and you know, some of them are funny. A lot of them reveal a level of rage that is frankly kind of frightening to me. You know, it's like this book is very, you know, I have a lot of love and affection for my daughter. So people like write me and they're like, I know what your next book should be called. It should be called, I'm gonna fucking throw you off a fucking bridge. You know, it's like, yeah, like, oh, slow down. Like, nobody said anything about that. You know? I mean, obviously, as I'm sure you're all aware, like, you know, there's a whole genre of bedtime books that we're riffing on here. So when someone is like, "Dude, eat your fucking vegetables," it's like, yeah, kind of, but also there's no like eat your vegetables book to play with. So I think most immediately we're gonna do a G-rated version of the book for children. You know, because my daughter is 3, but our publisher at Akashic Books, Johnny Temple, has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and his kids were aware of the fact that there was this book that was sort of like causing upheaval and mayhem in their house, because this is kind of an unprecedented thing for Akashic, the way this book has kind of like taken off. And so he sat down and read his kids the books, censoring it as he went, and his 5-year-old loved it, because he totally recognized himself in this character, in this mischievous kid who's sort of winning in the battle to stay awake against his parents. So I think we're going to do a G-rated version. And Ricardo, when we started this process, was prescient enough to do the illustrations at a really nice, big size. So we're talking about doing the kids version, the bigger, right?
Yeah. I mean, you see the book. It's a really nice, cute, like little size. But originally, I was thinking we were doing a children's book style, and that's the illustrations were in mind of paying homage to classical children's literature and playing with that genre. So the book is really like that big. So yeah, we're going to do a G-rated version. We've kind of been Adam shared with me some ideas so far about it. It looks really good. I'm really psyched about it. And I'm also excited to just go back in and play with a little bit of the illustrations. It was a fun thing to draw. I mean, because as I was recently saying, basically, I got to be really sappy and like really cute and really just sappy and saccharinely sweet, because I knew that Adam's words kind of were reining in, you know, what I could do. So I could afford myself to go there and just try to support what he was doing with the words. So we went through a lot of different little versions of what, you know, how the picture should be, to what extent the picture should be jokey or funny. And ultimately, I think we just decided to go back with the illustrations are really serene and idyllic, and try not to compete with the words that were obviously already just on point with the story. So.
But they built only in computer, or do you paint them or draw them?
They're drawn. They're mostly half of them are, most of the landscapes are watercolors that I do. The children actually are real kids. That what I did from on the onset of this, the way I work, I can work best from pictures when I'm doing people. So I wrote to a lot of parents, and I sent emails out and said, of parents with little kids, do anyone have any pictures of kids that want, students or friends of mine that want to be a part of this project? And at the time, it was a really small thing. I mean, there was no, you know, just Adam and myself and a really small publisher in Brooklyn that we matched up with. So I got pictures from friends, and we asking, you know, pictures of kids that are in the stage of the posture of grumpiness or sleepiness or whining. Try to capture that, and got a great bunch of pictures that we went through, and just some of those informed what would go into the story. Like, oh, like the little kid asking for milk, like looking up, feeding me, was a real photograph of a friend of mine, and it was just so perfect. This has to fit in there. So that's where a lot of the kids. So we actually, there's like a little extended family out from this book of parents and families that are really connected in that way.
We got a couple of seats if you guys want to come in.
Okay. You want to be first in line for the sign?
They have a plan.
Any other questions?
So I guess you wrote this from real life experience, and if you have a daughter,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
no field work necessary.
No field work. Getting out of the room was field work.
Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter was 2 when I wrote it.
Okay, yeah, I have a daughter that's almost 2, and
Yes.
it's so perfect. I can relate so perfectly.
I have a daughter that's 10, and I feel the same way.
Oh, no, I don't want to hear that.
You just depressed everybody.
I can't imagine when they can like get out of bed and go like, oh, I can't
I'm
imagine
reading a really good book for school.
You're not that far away.
Well, I've certainly heard from my mother, my mother and father are here, that I was a terror at that age as well, sleeping, and I'm okay now. And I sleep.
You grow up, right?
Yeah, you guys made it up through all right, right? Just a little payback. Yeah.
Every so often I'll be up at 6 in the morning and I say, I should give him a call.
Yeah. No,
I know what it's like.
Yeah, we hear from a lot of parents whose kids are 30, 40, and they're like, I remember exactly what this was like. So be aware that these memories are going to be with you. This is not something you'll forget about.
Yeah, but maybe they'll kind of turn into gold as I had with this. Turn into something.
Can you talk a little bit about your local roots here from Boston?
Sure. Yeah, we both were from Newton, and I went to Newton North, and Adam went to Newton South.
Right. So there's a real cross. We've bridged a real divide by collaborating on this book. There's a lot of healing.
Yeah. So we knew each other back then. We were like kind of musicians, rappers, like trying to do things, and we met at a battle of the bands, and then went to undergraduate school together. So we've known each other for a long time. I do children's books. I've done children's books illustration, and Adam does novels. So we never really worked together in this capacity before.
But yeah, I mean, when I wrote the piece, Ricardo came immediately to mind because I was such a fan of his work, and I knew that a book like this he could knock it out of the park. So, and he did.
Any more questions before we sign some books with him?
How was the cover selected?
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question.
The cover.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, Adam wrote the book, probably in a couple days and in a couple sittings. And then for the illustration, that takes a lot more time. So we went through months and months of going back and forth, and the book grew, and for the most part, I've done a lot of books myself. So to be working with another person and a publisher, different creative direction was starting to get a little weary after 7 months.
Right, especially when everybody else's work was done. I'm like over here with my feet kicked up, like, let's see another version of that.
Yeah, so the cover went through a lot of different stages. Actually, the scene with the moonlight in the city was an original cover. That was the first version that Adam liked, and I wasn't feeling it, and then I started to like it. But then no one liked it. We wanted to have some kids on the cover.
But it was that illustration where you came up with the brilliant idea. Because, I mean, the big question all along was like, what are we going to do with the title? How are we going to work this? We never thought about not using that title, but clearly it needed to be obscured in some kind of way that wasn't cheesy. And Ricardo came up with the moon, blocked it out, which was...
Yeah, which actually for a while also our publisher was like, no, we're definitely not doing that. We'll think of something else.
Is this too explicit? Or?
I don't know what his objection was, because we were both, that was something that the two of us always, I think, agreed on, like, that's gonna work.
Yeah.
I don't know what he, and I remember asking, being like, Johnny, like, what are you thinking instead? Crickets. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I don't know what he had in mind. Nothing. He was just being difficult. We each took turns being difficult in the process.
Yeah, but it really did bring it to a better place because it really pushed us. It pushed me. Like I did definitely 3 or 4 versions of the cover that I wasn't happy with, but it got us to a place where we were happy with it. This original cover with the tigers and the sleeping child was originally elephants and a wake child, which Adam said, these elephants look like a bunch of slaughtered beasts.
Yeah. Some animals, when they're asleep, look like they're asleep. Others look like they've been massacred. Elephants happen to fall into that latter category. As I learned after looking at the
They
illustration.
would snuggle up like heads on top of heads.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, it was just creepy. It was gray. Just looked wrong, you know.
Did you make them like a sleeping tiger?
No. This was before the Tiger Mother book was released. Or, we weren't making we weren't making any comment on like the Asian economy or anything like that. It was just, tigers seemed like a good combination of lovable, ferocious, colorful. Looked like they were sleeping when they were sleeping.
Yeah, they're prettier than gray elephants. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And the background went from a bright orange originally. It was like a really bright color.
Right, which made no sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what we were thinking with that. You know what we were thinking is because Johnny was like, the cover should be bright. So we were like, okay, so then it'll be like a sunset. But it didn't make any sense. It looked like it could be sunrise, the kid was awake, had the kid been up all night, what's going on? Did she just wander in front of the tigers? Like, yeah, it was,
And we had one version that we sent out because it was reached such an impasse we couldn't come up with anything. We reached out to a book designer that worked with our publishing company, and they gave us a couple of versions that looked like bad comedy movies, like Look Who's Talking To, had like bright colors and big words.
Yeah, and a photograph of my daughter in front of it, being like, she was cute in that photo, I think. But you know, I tend to think she's cute. But that was an awful. Yeah, so it's a lot of compromise and dialogue, like raising children.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh wait, did you have a question too?
I think you am.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
My question is, has there been like anybody who's like seriously upset that you guys use the F word?
Oh yeah.
Everyone I know thinks it's funny, but
Yeah, no, because you hang out with cool. I mean, the objections in Massachusetts.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there haven't been objections. They've been fairly muted and limited. Like nobody has picked this up on the right as like a wedge issue. Like Glenn Beck hasn't talked about it. Michelle Bachmann's not railing against it. You know, in New Hampshire, site of the Revolutionary War. That's her best quote so far. I'm happy to be here in New Hampshire where the revolution. Anyway, let me not get distracted by Michelle Bachmann. It's so easy to. There have been objections. I mean, the main and silliest objections are like people who are very indignant, like, I would never read this book to a child, you know, and it's like, yeah, no shit, like, we said that, you know, like, right, don't do it, you know. There have been, I think what's interesting is when a book or when anything sort of ascends into mainstream culture and it has a certain level of crossover and presence, it becomes something that people use to talk about other things. So people do think pieces and opinion pieces with the book as a point of departure to talk about the state of parenting or the state of vulgarity in our culture or whatever. Nobody's...
Well, which is not New Zealand. There's
Oh,
always New
true,
Zealand.
right. There's always New Zealand. There's always New Zealand. Family First, a Christian group in New Zealand, called for a ban of the book before it was even out. It only came out in New Zealand and Australia like a week ago. And actually was read, you know, here the audiobook was done by Samuel L. Jackson, which is it's his best work since Pulp Fiction. They call it Oz, I guess. I'm still trying to, I always feel weird calling it Oz, but they call it Oz. So in Australia and New Zealand, also known as Oz, they got this very famous, venerable, beloved children's television presenter named Noni Hazelhurst, who's like, she's like, you know, their version of like Susan from Sesame Street or something. And she read the book. She did a video, and like everybody lost their minds. Like it was incredible. Like it's getting all this attention. But Family First New Zealand put out this press release basically saying that while clearly the book is humorous and fine for normal people to read, in the hands of dysfunctional and aggressive parents, it could present a real problem, and thus it should be banned.
Oh, I saw that here too recently.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I do.
From New Zealand, right?
No,
Oh, really? Someone's calling to ban it here?
Yeah.
Really?
They were saying that they were like in the hands of the wrong parents.
Right.
And
And, which is just a puzzling, okay, in the hands of dysfunctional, aggressive people, like anything is a problem. You know, like a spoon, a child, yeah, like if you are dysfunctional and aggressive, there are many things that you should not have in your home, and books would be the last of my personal concern. Yeah, like children. Yeah, I mean, so it's a very bizarre, I think, objection. So that's the only call I think that I know of until now, anyway, for like banning the
I
book.
don't know if they were calling to ban it. They were just like, this is ridiculous and horrible. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, there's some of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, some of it seems kind of opportunistic. Some people have written op-eds and things. You know, it's like a nice way to get your name out there if you got nothing else going on at the moment. But it's been pretty limited. One of the first pieces of media that we got, which, you know, the book, you know, was long before it was published, it was getting all this attention. It kind of had this viral thing where it was ricocheting around the internet. Some of you probably saw PDFs of it long before it was published. We're not mad about that, it's okay. So really early on in the process, the Today Show's blog, or Parents blog, did a piece on it and had a poll. And they asked readers, was this book hilarious, objectionable, or I'm too tired to have an answer, or something like that. And you know, it's like a very mainstream thing, right? The Today Show's blog is like about as mainstream, middle of the road as it gets. And 90% of the people responding said it was hilarious. I think that was when we were like, okay, like this isn't just gonna be for people on the coasts. Like this is gonna sell in the red states. Like this is, you know.
Well, I laughed out loud when I read it.
Yeah. And I'm from Wyoming.
Hey.
There you go.
Do you know where you're selling?
Where your vote like swings elections.
Do
Right?
we know where we're selling most?
Which
Regions?
state?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I haven't seen a breakdown. Yeah, I mean, we've been at the top of bestseller lists in a lot of different regions, like the Northern California independent booksellers list. We're on the top of that, and also the Mid-Atlantic and the Chicago area. So
Yeah.
I don't know where we're selling most, but it seems to be selling all over the place. And you know, a lot of times with books, your ability to sell in different places is immediately handicapped by whether or not the store's even stocking. So like previous books of mine, there's been a sort of decision made before the book was even out that it's not going to sell in Wyoming, so it never even makes it to Wyoming, you know? It gets stocked only in sort of urban areas or something. So for the book to sell sort of across the country, there first has to be a decision made by a publisher or a distribution company that it might sell all over the country. So we were lucky because we had this big platform of attention that was driving, you know, that. Yeah.
Did you know it was gonna blow up, or was it that thing on the Today Show, that poll that confirmed it? Because I didn't think it was gonna blow up.
Yeah.
No, I don't think anyone. We didn't think it was going to blow up like this. I mean, when Adam first sent me the book, like months ago, before it was any book, I knew it was special. Like it hit me immediately. I thought people are going to talk about this. This is going to get some conversation going, and I just thought that would be fun to ride. I didn't really think that it would be Matt Lahr talking about it. You know, he was going to be the
Samuel
person.
Jackson Reed.
Yeah, that was. I mean, even that. When we heard Samuel Jackson, we sold the audio rights to Audible.com, and there was some play about who we were going to get to do it. Adam wanted Christopher Walken. I thought that'd be fun. And then they sent us an email saying Samuel Jackson is reading this book. He's going to be on the Letterman show on Tuesday, and it was just like, whoa, this is really Samuel Jackson is reading our book. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's crazy. There've been a number of moments where it's just like nothing else could happen. You know, like it's reached its peak. Nothing, the craziest things that could possibly happen have happened, and then consistently something crazier has happened. So yeah, I mean, I wrote the book with no expectations, really on a whim, as a joke, without even seriously thinking I was going to publish it. I started to gather a little bit of momentum because everybody I read it to thought it was funny, but this was still friends and family. So there were sort of these slowly widening circles of readers. First it was my friends and family, and it was mine and our publishers and Ricardo's. Then it was booksellers. then it was the people to whom the booksellers leaked the PDF. And so it really rippled out slowly. So at no point was I ever like, this is gonna blow up, until it had already blown up. And then I was like, this is not gonna blow up further.
So that takes us to how real is the Werner Herzog thing?
Oh, Werner Herzog really read the book. We did a launch at the New York Public Library. That was the official launch, and Adam and I were on stage with the gentleman who runs those events, and he was friends with Werner, so he asked Werner Herzog, would you do a recording for us? And eventually he did it, and he said he liked the job very much. It was very fun, and it was very frightening. It's just kind of a menacing, weird way of hearing the story. So yeah.
But that version was done special for the event, but of course, like everything else, is ricocheting around the interwebs. So you can find that if you're so inclined. But I warn you, it's terrifying. I mean, Werner Herzog reading anything is terrifying. You know, just be forewarned. That one you really shouldn't play for your kids.
I think we could take one more question and then we're gonna have you guys go out and sign. Sure.
How does it feel for you as a writer? You write fiction, and I imagine you take it seriously, to have a children's book really become your claim to fame. And how do you anticipate the rest of your career to kind of take off because of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm fine with it. I mean, I think this is a very daunting and scary moment for most writers, because the publishing industry is in free fall. It's much harder to make a living as a literary writer than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Publishing houses are taking fewer chances. Editors have less autonomy to buy books that are a little edgy or risky or don't have a big sales track record behind them. Nobody's taking any chances. Consequently, every writer I know is scrambling, is trying to get a teaching job or write commercial fiction or TV or movies or, you know,
just
something. So I think I wouldn't be inclined to sort of turn my nose up at any kind of success anyway, but given this moment, it's right on time. And I think that for both of us, it opens up avenues that were not plausible before. It's a lot easier for me to get a meeting, you know, with a Hollywood producer now, because this book has been set up at a studio to be a film.
Short films.
Fox 2000 bought the film rights. They're making a feature film of it, allegedly. Yeah, stay tuned for more information on that. So you know, for me, it's there's no downside to it. I mean, and I think it's helped my backers. People are buying. That's all right. Just turn away. And
She's got a kid.
Yeah, it's a good thing across the board, I think. But I'll continue to write literary fiction. I mean, I don't think this will change the trajectory of my career, because the one constant for me has always been that I've only written the stuff that I wanted to write without any real thought or intelligence about marketability or, you know, how a book looks in the world. I've just sort of written what I've wanted to write. Which is also the fun thing about this, is that there was no calculation. It wasn't like I sat down and looked at demographics and saw that there was a baby boom happening, or identified some lack in the market.
Wait 2 years.
Yeah, it's just me talking the same type of shit I've been talking my entire life, basically. Like thinking I'm funny. And it happened to hit some kind of weird vein in the zeitgeist, and you know, here we are.